Greetings, listeners, and welcome to On the Spectrum podcast, a show that explores the many complexities and diversities of being on the spectrum. This week, we're at the annual Loddon Conference, where we are mingling with some of the care professionals that have gathered here from around the UK. We caught up with a few of these professionals for a quick little chat. Just a word of warning, some of the content is of a sensitive nature and some viewers may find it disturbing. But please enjoy our chats. All right, thank you very much, Paddy, for joining us today on the Spectrum podcast. We appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. So, Paddy, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and the organisation that you work for?
Dave, thanks very much. So my name's Paddy Behan, and I am co-founding director of an organisation called PBS UK. So we're a consultancy, positive behaviour support consultancy, providing support to real kind of range of people, adults and children and organisations and families, anyone that's got any kind of positive behaviour support needs. So we work all across the UK, and I'm super lucky we've just got such a lovely team of people that work for us. So that's me in a nutshell.
Great stuff. So the first question we got is, could you share some of the most promising interventions and research developments in autism support that have caught your attention recently?
Oh, blimey. What, in terms of direct support for...
just anything that you think has caught your attention and something that you think you'd like to highlight or needs to be emphasised.
Dave, there's lots out there, I think. There's lots of good stuff going on, particularly the co-production stuff that's been spoken about kind of at the conference today. But one of the things that we've done as an organisation that we've found to be incredibly helpful and useful is a process called practical functional assessment and skill-based treatment.
Okay.
So this comes from Greg Hanley and his colleagues over in the States.
Oh, right, okay.
And
it's quite a mouthful. Can you break it down for us? Like, what does that involve?
Absolutely. I'll try not to get too stuck in the jargon. I'll try not to get too stuck. So essentially, it's a new methodology around functional analysis. So kind of understanding the function that certain behaviours serve for people. So we've been using this process with children that we've been working with. And fundamentally, the kind of slight difference to typical functional analysis approaches is it starts with a place that they call happy, relaxed and engaged. So we're actually seeking to establish the conditions that lead for people to be happy, relaxed, engaged. The kind of alternative approach kind of historically is we're really focused on those behaviours of concern, the incidents, and we're looking at the kind of factors that lead to that, whereas this approach starts with what are the conditions we need for people to be really happy, settled, relaxed, etc., and then we start kind of working on what are the things that happen in that environment that are challenging for that individual. So we start to get a real idea around kind of what brings them away from that happy, relaxed and engaged state, and then we can start to build a picture around kind of what skills might be helpful for that person to learn to cope with the things that actually challenge them.
Very proactive kind of stuff.
Very proactive and constructive too. So it almost always starts with teaching that young person a communication response, which is a way of getting all the stuff back that they were enjoying, essentially. Right. So we start with teaching that individual what they call an omnibus kind of request, which gives them access to all of the things that they want that's been linked with that happy, relaxed and engaged state. So for example, the example they give in the training is if you're working with a youngster and they really love fans, then you're going to flood that room with fans. So there might be a room with 20 fans. So you want it to be kind of utopia for that individual. And often the challenge for people is when we're asking people to come away from their preferred things that they're doing, is that's when we see those kind of escalations in behaviour. So we then teach a way of that person saying kind of my way, essentially, which we then will kind of give access back to all of the things that we're doing. So it's teaching that communication response about how do you get access to all of the things that you want. And then we slowly start to build in kind of toleration responses to enable that individual to kind of cope with delays and denials and some unpredictable kind of situations. So it's a very constructive approach. So rather than the kind of antecedent control where we're just minimizing triggers for people, it's actually teaching these youngsters methods of getting access to the things that they want and also helping them cope with delays and denials in kind of returning to the things that they want. So really kind of life skills, function-based approaches.
And you're doing it on their terms, almost like a step-by-step kind of program almost.
So it's completely bespoke. So the happy, relaxed and engaged looks different for absolutely everybody. The communication responses look different. And then kind of all of the interventions that kind of stem out from there look really different. So just to give you a couple of examples, you know, we've supported youngsters that were really struggling to stay in class. There's been a couple of occasions where we've worked with the teaching assistants at the kind of school. We've used this approach to allow that person to kind of leave the classroom and come back in on their own terms. And actually, as this kind of progressed, they're staying at that table and doing kind of much more work in a happy, relaxed and engaged kind of state, and a bunch of other things, but I won't kind of drag you through all of those.
That's great. I like the way you're individualizing it as well, and it's sort of tailored to that person.
Completely bespoke, and I'm going to forget the kind of three of the really key areas now, but two of them that they talk about when they're delivering the training for this is safety is paramount. So we don't need to see kids in full-on kind of out, you know, behaviours of concern, really sketchy incidents. What we're doing is we're looking to reinforce the very early escalation of that that kind of change. So we're never working in kind of real states of distress. In fact, we're trying to kind of step away from that completely. And again, all about kind of gaining trust and that kind of therapeutic working relationship with that individual, which is brilliant. So again, it's like deviation from kind of needing to walk through the fires with people actually, and trying to develop people's kind of capabilities to deal with the kind of the things that are challenging for them. So for us as a business, I think that it's been great to learn that approach and to figure out the kind of context in which we can apply it. And it's been brilliant because it's for us, we're undertaking these kind of functional analyses now that we're often getting done in a matter of hours versus kind of days and weeks of assessment, and maintaining really good kind of rapport with that individual. And what's great about it, as soon as you've finished your practical functional assessment, which is the kind of short analysis phase, we move directly into that skill-based treatment, so supporting that individual to learn those coping and tolerance strategies for to support them to live the lives that they want to live.
That's great. That's really positive stuff. I like that. And
we love it.
Very, very relationship based as well.
It's brilliant. And applied behaviour analysis has had a tricky reputation in many areas, and deservedly so in some contexts. And I hope that this is kind of showing a much more kind of person-centred, humanistic, kind of trust-based application of the kind of science to help a kind of population of people. So I think it's really exciting. Early days in the UK, I think we're one of the only organisations that's actually credentialed now in the UK to do it, but the research that's coming out of the States with those guys that are really skilled with it, it's compelling, and the stories from families about how life-changing this has been for them is just brilliant. So we've loved kind of learning that approach, and we're really enjoying kind of learning how to apply it in different kind of contexts.
That's great.
It's cool.
Yeah, it does sound interesting. I might look it up. Definitely. The next question I was going to ask was, during the course of your career, was there like a moment or an interaction that changed your perspective on autism and people on the spectrum?
It was probably an interaction with a family.
Right.
If I'm being honest. So I'll just give you the example. So, positive behaviour support is the kind of field that I work in and have done kind of most of my career. And I remember a time doing an annual review for a young man who, people say you're not supposed to, but you always have someone you work with that's got a really special place in your heart.
A favourite almost, yes.
This lad just had a really special place in my heart. So I was really lucky that people invested in training for me as a member of staff. And my boss at the time had paid for me to go to the Tizard Centre to study positive behaviour support. And I said to him, who do you want me to work with? And this particular chap within the organisation at the minute, we hadn't got support right for him. So he asked me if I'd work with him. And I just fell in love with this guy. I'd never worked with someone with such kind of extreme ends of self-injurious behaviour previously, and he taught me so much about what I didn't know. And the story I was given about preparing his annual review, and we'd done this great work, or what we thought was great work, and kind of restrictive practices had almost been eliminated with him, and this is someone that was having floor restraints quite regularly. This is a long time ago. And I remember preparing this review, and his mum getting really cross with me. I was there really proud about these graphs and saying, look, he's not being restrained anymore, and look at the progress that he's made and the team have made. And she gave me a telling off and said, my son's not a graph, which was a really useful kind of moment for me.
Sort of like a hard hit, but something you can learn from almost.
A really hard hit that look, I might be really excited about these graphs, but actually how does this sit with kind of everybody else? And as I say, this chap had taught me so much. But the next year, another presentation, we had videos in there of him on the beach. Because when I got a chance to speak to him, I said, Paddy, we've been lied to all of the time our son's been alive. We've been lied to by professionals about what he's been doing or what he hasn't been doing. So I just don't trust when people show me these things. I just don't trust it. So the next year we had the videos of him on the beach and doing the cooking and all this kind of stuff, and played it, and it just didn't quite hit the way that I'd hoped, and I could still see Mum was upset. And I followed her into the car park after the review, and I'd always got on well with her, and she was sat in her car crying, and I just said, you okay? I thought this was much better. You can see the things that he's doing, and you can see, and I'll never forget. She said, Paddy, I'm crying because I can't do those things with my son. And I just thought, this, not only has this young man taught me so much about how to support folks with the kind of complexity of needs that he has, but really taught me a lot about that kind of family's experience, and just that we'll never know. Some of us will never know what those experiences are like. So really helped me kind of work on my approaches to engaging with families in a much more kind of meaningful way, and really taking that time to get to know them and their story and that kind of thing. So
getting that perspective that helps you focusing, and again, like you said, because you're child-centered and person-centered.
Absolutely. So I think that was a really, there's been so many powerful experiences, but that one sticks with me for a long time, because I was so fond of that lad and I was so fond of that family, and they really taught me a lot in the early days about what I was getting wrong. So I'm really grateful to them all for that.
Well, thank you, Paddy, for sharing that experience with us.
Pleasure.
So why would you recommend someone in our industry working with people with special needs and autism and on the spectrum disorder, why would you recommend that they come along to a Loddon Conference?
Because it's great. Because it's absolutely great. There are people here doing all sorts of different roles that are super passionate. It's a great opportunity to share experiences. There's a really kind of diverse makeup of people that are presenting. You've got family members. You've often got people with kind of lived experience. You've got frontline staff through to kind of all different echelons. If you're really looking to kind of come and engage with a like-minded group of people that are passionate about what they want to, what they do, and they're willing to kind of share all of their practices, this is the place to come and do it.
Great. Cool. Thank you very much, Paddy, for coming down and chatting to us, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Dave,
thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Laura, for joining us on the podcast today. Would you like to start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Laura Watts. I'm the Registered Manager for Kind Tailored Care. This is my third year at the Loddon Conference. And I guess I done a workshop here last year and won the Marion Cormack Award. Because I did a workshop on being an openly neurodivergent manager in social care and how to support other neurodivergent people to take up those leadership positions.
Oh, right. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, very cool. What are the most promising sort of researches and developments that you've come across recently that has caught your eye and attention?
Oh, I could go into a lot of detail.
You have to pick out sort of one specific thing that you think, this has potential.
In terms of the biggest reads, I would say the main things that appeal to me is obviously being neurodivergent, is the introduction kind of more mainstream of the neurodiverse principles and disability rights principles in that. And part of the big thing that I teach a lot of our staff about is the thing that I call the double empathy theory, that a lot of people might know about. And that's just been structured again into what they'd call the triple empathy theory. So they love to make things complicated. Yeah, certainly.
Could you just for people that may not be aware,
so the double empathy theory is the idea that people that are neurodivergent, so autistic people, people with ADHD, people with a learning disability, communicate not in the wrong way, but in a different way. And it's quite clear to anybody who's neurodivergent, if you're in a room full of neurodivergent people, you have no problems of communication.
Right, okay.
It's the idea that if you are what we would call a neurotypical, so someone without one of these conditions, you communicate in a different way, and that's where the barriers to that communication are. I like to, when I'm talking about it, talk about beavers and otters. They both do quite a lot of the same sort of thing in the water, but they have very different languages, and they have to make extra effort to live together and communicate with one another.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. So the triple empathy theory is kind of moving on from that, where it's also brought in professionals into this mixture, which is very apt for here. So we've had families here, we've had people with lived experience of living in care and all this sort of thing. And they'll often talk about the differences in language and that they have to learn themselves the right words to say to get the responses from professionals. So it's that extra dynamic to it.
Okay.
Because you could have two professionals, one neurotypical, one who's not, that might struggle to communicate in the same way. Or you could have someone with that lived experience who can't quite communicate in the way that they would like to with those professionals.
Okay, so it's almost like a sort of inclusive kind of approach where everyone sort of has the knowledge to
it's
break those barriers down.
It's basically to make it very clear that both sides have to make an effort.
Sure. Yeah, oh, exactly. Yeah. Okay, no, that's cool. That's a cool focus. I like that. Throughout your career, was there a moment that reshaped your understanding of autism and people with challenging behaviours? Was there any moment that sort of reshaped your understanding of the whole concept? Yes,
I would say. I mean, I've been in health and social care now since I was 17, so it's coming up 15 years now.
Sure.
So when I first started, I was first walked this world through diagnosis, which was a very different journey to a lot of my colleagues at the time. So I thought I knew quite a lot because at the time of diagnosis, they slapped a textbook down and said, get on with it, and I did.
Right.
That was our support. So you learn all this language and you learn all these approaches, and then you actually meet different people that live a completely different life, even though they've got the same label.
Yeah.
And what I think was most instrumental for me was the difference in attitudes and how you support people. So where I first started, not naming any names, it was a very much restrictive, not aversive, but very much if the person wasn't compliant, would be the word I would use, they wouldn't be able to do the things that they wanted to do. And that was what we were trained in, and I don't agree with this. I wasn't open about my diagnoses then, but I went, no, because I know why they're doing that. They're not doing that to be difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I went into a different place. I went into a different place of work with a different management and a different staff culture, and it was completely different. They started to actually look at why the behaviours were occurring from a functional perspective, but also what they were trying to tell us. And I was also open for the first time about my own diagnosis to that manager, who used that as a strength and saw that as a strength rather than seeing that as something that had to be negotiated and risk assessed and all this.
And that's interesting that in that environment you were more willing to open up, and then that attribute could be used.
It felt safer. It felt like I wasn't being punished for being disabled.
Sure, yeah, it was more open and more person-centered. It seems like
100%.
More, yeah, definitely.
So an example I like to talk about is there was a gentleman who every time he went into a specific room, he would become very distressed and he would self-injure himself, and nobody could figure out what the function of it was. Nobody could figure out what the trigger was. My manager, in desperation, said, Laura, can you go sit in that room for half an hour and see if you can see anything? And I went in and I went, yeah, can you not hear that? She's like, what? And I went, the electricity up there from that lighting is horrid. I can't stay in here for too long. They changed the lighting, behaviour stopped.
That's fascinating, yeah, that you just need that perspective, or you need to sort of almost try and get into their mindset and try and figure out what it is that's disturbing them. That's awesome. And we're here today at the 2024 conference that Loddon's holding. For anyone out there that might be interested to attend this, could you explain what's the value and is it worth them coming down to see?
100%. You get to meet a mixture of people from all different walks of life that have a variety of experiences, but are all coming together with that common goal to try and support people to live the lives that they chose. But whenever they find a difficulty for any reason, instead of looking at that really restrictive, aversive approach, finding ways to make that better for them, to get them involved and to make it happen. Yeah. You know, I was introduced to ProAct by my wonderful CEO now and mentor, Sophie Pinder. She's very well known, but she walks and breathes it. And it's something that since coming here, everybody does. And that's what makes the difference. It's not just talking. You're having conversations with people from different organisations, from different walks of life, from different experiences. We've got so many names here today of people with so many different ways of looking at the world, and about finding that common truth and applying it. That's why I'm here every year. That's
great. Well, thank you very much. Cheers for joining us, and please go and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much. Hello guys, and thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. Would you like to start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourselves?
Iris Uli-Delay.
Hi, my name is Iris. It sounds funny saying Iris. My name is Iris. It's the first thing, I don't normally say my name. So I'm going to say my name is Iris, and I am me. If I told you what I did, we'd be here all day. What I will say is I've got every mental health diagnosis known to man on the moon, and some they probably haven't found yet. But if I do go to see a psychiatrist, you can guarantee they'll find another one. But you know what? I've got a thing called DID, Dissociated Identity Disorder. And I've got everything, all the traits are to do with that. I'm a human being, and I love what I do. I love people, I love sunflowers, and I'm here doing a podcast. My goodness me, I feel like I'm on I watched them on the BBC. How wonderful. Oh my goodness. Right. Okay, that's me.
So I'm Michael. So my career, if you will, originally started off in an adventure home, looking after the elderly, which I got into after looking after my own granddad. Kind of worked my way through and got into the realm of training other care staff. A big thing of mine was I walked in off the street with no qualifications and no experience to look after our most vulnerable people, and that's something I want to change. So I've since become a teacher and a trainer, or a lecturer as they say, and through sort of the materials I make and create and the companies I engage with, it's a passion, to be honest with you, to make this a more desirable sector to work in, a more valued sector, not a job you do to pay the bills. So I do a lot of that now, training. I consult out to other care providers, offer bits of advice and whatnot. And very recently, we've launched a project, Remarkable Outcomes, which will be a residential childcare provider, so providing homes for our most vulnerable children. Iris is going to be our care experience consultant, keep us all in line, yeah. And that's kind of how we met, wasn't it? So the work Iris does with the British Institute of Learning Disabilities, who I train for, Iris came to watch me deliver as a panel member. I was a bit nervous on the day, but ever since then we've just kept in touch, haven't we? Yeah. And decided, we can do some work together. That's
amazing.
And we're here today because I truly believe I've got a lot of skills, none of them I can use, because they've got one. I always used to say that. They've got one. I'm here. Well, can I ask a question? No, we've done the questions. You can just read off them. And I challenge that. Face those barriers head on. I'm an independent freelance trainer, and I saw something that I didn't like when I saw him training, not because of him, because my gut feelings tell me, actually, this doesn't feel right. I want to make sure he's okay, make sure he feels safe, and check on him. And I did. And look at us, we're here. So I'm the old one, and he's the young one.
So during the course of your careers, was there anything that helped reshape your perspective on dealing with challenging behaviours and spectrum disorder?
Yeah, I like to. I'm doing a piece of work actually, because I do actually teach and lecture at universities now. How good is that? I haven't got a knowledge. Oh, sorry, that's Scouts for exam. I did say that somewhere, and I said I haven't got a knowledge, and someone said, "What does that mean?" I had to explain. Anyway, I am naughty, by the way. I'm a naughty nanny Wigan because I've been adopted by Wigan. How fabulous is that? I don't like those words because I've got mental health disorder. I'm disordered. Which one of me is disordered? There's 13 of me. You know, which one? Yeah, well, yeah. And I must be on the spectrum, if that's what people want to say. I'm on the spectrum. I need to understand that word, because I need to think about words, if that makes any sense, because words have the power to harm and words have the power to heal. That's because people as human beings, please.
For me, it was having worked in care settings for so long. Then I went to lecture in a mainstream college, and I think because I'd had the experience of dementia and other sort of learning disabilities and so on, support work, I could quite easily spot in my students who needed that little bit more, and who maybe needed a little bit of digging to work out what exactly is going on. And when I saw that wasn't easy to come by in mainstream education settings, and I was starting to get into, I'm not going to say arguments, but discussions about why things need to be done differently. That was where I kind of really, I backed away from mainstream education, went into devising everything ourselves, and for me that's where the sort of the polarising thing is that what's mainstream and what is kind of put across and expected of us all isn't what people are actually living with. And
so you're more targeting the individual and what's best for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm quite confident in saying mainstream education as a whole is a bit of one size fits all, and if you aren't that size, you're going to struggle a little bit.
It's like they try to fit you into categories, and
exactly that. And then I was the gobby teacher to say, actually, no. And sort of got myself not into trouble, but just kind of made myself a little bit unpopular.
Yeah.
But who wants to be popular, right?
We need to push those boundaries though to make change.
And I always say to the guys I train now, my big thing is pushing boundaries. I'll push the rules, but I won't break them. Right. And that is exactly what we have to do, I think, for people.
Absolutely.
As people.
And that's where I started off in dementia care and in a hospice. And we need to go back to basics. Basic care. Thinking about having the person heart and central of everything we do. I think we've lost some of that. I have spoken quite publicly, so I do get into a lot of trouble. I went back and asked my psychiatrist to put me back on all my medication. And he said, Iris, we've got you off everything. And I said, I know, but I'm frightened, it's frightening me. And he said, why? I said, I'm like a gob on a stick. I can't shut up. He said, we don't want you to shut up. I'd been silenced from being 4 years old. And even in recent months, they tried to silence me again because I said rape, the word rape. I was being taught. I wasn't delivering training. I trauma-inform everything I do. And I had the person, I'm a member of staff, right, and it hurt me to think that they were silencing me after utilising all my lived experience. Don't silence people, please don't, otherwise we'll never, ever, ever enable the changes we need to give people a chance and a voice.
That's where I feel incredibly lucky to cross paths, because of the project that we've set up, and why we set that up is because we've been and done it, worked in it, and
you've got that perspective.
We know the perspective. Yeah. We know the money that goes through it, and we know where that money can be better spent. And I know that, and my business partners know that, and we're all got that experience. She knows that better than anybody, you know?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you listen to that? And why wouldn't you promote that? So that's why our relationship will go from strength to strength.
Careful what you say. Last time someone said that, I thought someone was having an affair. Sorry.
Well,
I mean, you know, you don't need to edit that out, because that's people's, their judgments, their misconceptions, their judgments of people like us, especially when we're from Liverpool. Do you realise I'm a Scally? You know, I hate a Scouse accent.
You did sound very Scouse then.
Yes, Scally. And someone asked me before, what does that mean? And I said, I'm a robber, and everything else that goes along with it. But I'm not.
It's the sense of humour as well, I think.
We have got a wicked sense of humour.
Yeah.
Mine's worse than most people's. I think I'm funny, but I'm not. I'm delusional as well. I've got that diagnosis. But joking aside, I'm proud to be here at Loddon. And I've been asked back, how good is that? I loved last year. I felt included. I belonged. I wasn't judged. And I wanted to bring my partner in crime, the young bit, with me today, and they didn't hesitate. They gave me an opportunity to come and be again here today, to feel included and part of, and I think they're just amazing.
If someone was, if you wanted to recommend someone coming down to the Loddon Conference, what is it that you think is valuable in bringing them here?
I think, right, so I've put it on every bit of social media I can. So Twitter, as it used to be, and I call it X Factor, because I believe Loddon has the X Factor. I believe the staff, and I haven't been, just like for the record, right, I'm trying to be I haven't been paid to do this, okay? Right. The staff here are amazing, and they see the person, and they don't judge. So if any, just come and experience this wonderful inclusivity. I can never say that. Strokehead. Sorry. Just being included and supported to be here.
I think for me, it's a chance to collaborate rather than and again, just part of the project that we've set up, remarkable outcomes and the way we want to do things. Residential childcare or providing care, we can't have competitors in this sector. We are all trying to do the same thing and meet the same goal, and I think it's things like this that shout about that and actually promote that the message of collaboration, not competition. And that's why I, bit of a geek, can get a kick out of the things like this. Is because it reminds when you're in the office or you're in the laptop, and sometimes things can get a little bit lost. You come back to things like this and you remember, that's why I'm doing it. Or I pick up the phone to this lady and she certainly reminds me why we do it.
That's a great message.
She's a living example of it.
Fantastic, guys.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Iris and
you.
Michael, for coming down and just speaking with us briefly. Please go and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Cheers. Right, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. Thank you for coming away from the conference to give us a quick chat. So, Jodie, would you like to start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, totally. So I'm Jodie Simpson, and I'm a speech and language therapist. I was a teacher first, actually, and I qualified about 10 years ago as a speech and language therapist. Now I have a little bit of an edge about me because I'm also autistic, ADHD, and a lot of complex PTSD as well. So I come, I'm a package with a lot of lived experience.
Great. We were just asking everyone that comes in here, if someone was to come to the Loddon Conference, what would you think what's the value in coming and experiencing this conference?
I think it's really important to go to a variety of conferences from different kind of backgrounds, because I think you learn so many different things from different disciplines, from different perspectives and experiences. This is the first time I've ever been to a behaviour conference.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my first time ever. I'm a behaviour conference newbie.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I think we worked together so much. You know, I worked in the NHS. I've worked alongside PBS teams in private companies as an NHS practitioner.
Okay.
So actually, you know, now I'm working in a company that has PBS practitioners. I mean, I was in the learning disabilities team and we did have PBS practitioners, but it's slightly different when it's in a multidisciplinary NHS team compared to a private company that's got a, you know, because you don't have necessarily the same access to that wide, broad range of expertise from different backgrounds. So I think coming to a conference like this is really important, just to be able to hear lots of different viewpoints coming from different angles, because it's not just PBS specialists that are talking. Yeah. Well, certainly this year anyway. I don't know about previous years, but this year, obviously, we've got me as a speech and language therapist. That maybe that's the first time that you've had professionals from contexts outside of PBS come in. And I think it's really important to embrace that, and especially to embrace, you know, you've got people with lived experience here as well. I think you don't always have access to ask those kind of questions with the people that you're working with, because you're working with them. You can't always. I do tend to. I mean, maybe I'm slightly different because I'm quite matter of fact about the way talking about sensitive issues with people, but it can be difficult to talk about, like, for example, the culture of the company that I'm working with and whether you feel safe with me being here. That's a difficult conversation. It's one that I actually do have with the people that I work with, even when I worked in the NHS. You know, I would talk to people about their trauma, but actually in a space like this, at a conference, it's a safe space where you're not necessarily going to, you know, the success of what you're doing with that person is not dependent on whether you have a, you know, it's not going, that honest conversation is not going to interfere negatively here, because actually it's a safe space to have those conversations.
It's also like you can get some more insights and some more perspectives on your situation from people that have probably, you know, experienced the same things as you, or maybe have a different perspective on the situation once you've explained it to them.
I mean, just the networking in itself as well is often a great opportunity. You see collaborations coming together in places like this, don't you? So, like, people have been talking about their research they're doing, and then a company thinks, oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. Oh my God,
that's our missing piece almost.
Like, that's like, that just sounds like what we need. Can we get involved with your piece of research? And then you're like actually contributing to something much bigger. But you wouldn't have had that opportunity because you wouldn't have known about it if you hadn't come to something like this. But also, you know, you're developing your network. So if there's something that comes up late down the line in your company that you're like, oh, I'm really struggling, but I remember this person that was at this conference, had all this knowledge, you might reach out to them for some consultancy and say, you know, actually, can you come and support us with this? Or can I learn from you?
Because everything, it's almost giving you a back catalogue in your head of like, oh, this is someone that I could approach if I ever come across this concern. And you know, and like you were saying earlier about you seeing the little details when other people are looking at the wider picture. It's interesting that with these kind of conferences and with your networking, you could find someone that could find that little detail and bring it to the surface.
Well, like when I came here yesterday, like somebody that I had met before actually came and said, oh, I'm really glad that I've seen you because I'm just about to do this research study and I want your opinion on these things. And I was like, it's nice to get checked up as well and validated that what you're on the right path, I suppose, as well. And it just makes me feel like really famous or something.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's like my opinion is sought out.
That's lovely. That's awesome.
No, it is really lovely actually, because as an autistic person, as a community, we're quite overlooked a lot of the time. We've, especially those of us that are late diagnosed, you know, we've known that we're different, and we've just been seen as the odd one,
right?
Or that our views are sometimes labelled as maybe controversial, but really it's because we're being honest, and people don't like feeling uncomfortable.
Yes, yeah, sure.
And that's
sure.
all it is. It's about we make people feel uncomfortable for good reason.
Yeah.
But they don't always see it that way.
Yeah, and like you said, just having that different perspective can sometimes it can bring along the sort of conclusions that are very positive.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think it gives people, the amount of people that come back to me later on and said, "You said such and such a," and then when I reflect on it, I think, oh, that thing that I said was like it got me into trouble with my boss, not my current boss because they're amazing, but like one of my other bosses, and. But to them it was something that just completely changed how they, even just like saying things like neurodivergence, it's just a different way of seeing the world.
Yeah.
Like I've said, seeing the detail first and then scanning out to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Versus seeing the bigger picture and scanning into the detail. We're just approaching it from we get to the same conclusion, we meet in the middle.
I was going to say, do you kind of meet in the middle sometimes when they have to bring on your mindset and maybe you have to bring on a little bit of theirs?
Yeah, I mean, it works both ways, doesn't it? But as an autistic person, because we've started with the detail as I'm really small children when other children are not at that level of detail, because we're like A-level standard of detail when we're 6. So I'm serious.
Yeah.
And we haven't necessarily had the opportunities to develop that because we've just been told, well, your answer's wrong.
Yes, it's interesting you say that. We had someone in earlier that was in education. He was saying that every modern day sort of schools and that everyone has to fit their kind of like their category and their agenda.
Yeah, exactly,
when in actual fact, there's a lot
the
of
answers are A, B, and C.
Yes.
Well, that's too easy, And actually, it's not the obvious bit to us. The obvious bit.
Yeah, exactly. And
is the A-level bit.
Yeah, you've got the focus and the intelligence in another area because
everyone else has to catch up 10 years before they get to where we're at.
No, that's been fascinating speaking to you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys very much for coming out of the conference to have a quick chat with us. Would you like to start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, I'm Charles Parker, and as you can see, I'm getting a little bit on the older side these days, but it's still my one thing that I want to do is to help autism. I want to help my son have a better life, obviously, or both sons, in fact, because they're both on the spectrum. But Christopher in particular has had a very difficult time, and we've had to battle lots to get what we need for him. But we won't stop, I joke about my age, but that doesn't matter at all. We are a team, Tina and I, and we are determined to get everything we can for Christopher to make his life better. But more than that, we want to help people with autism all over this country and indeed all over the world. And we're putting things in place at the moment to bring that about, and we've got a determination where we just want to succeed with that.
Hi, I'm the other side. Tina Parker, mother to Christopher. We come here today at the Loddon Conference. Really enjoyed what was being presented, but advocating what we've done with Christopher, trying to empower other people to do the same through our book, the Tell It As It Is series. But just learning really, what we can do better and going forward with Chris and building that model of independence and people leading realistic lives within their own homes.
Okay, great. What took you on this journey? Was there a moment in your life that reshaped your understanding of autism or challenging behaviours?
I think for us, for me, I can only speak for myself. When Krista was diagnosed at 2 and 9 months, that was the start of it. But we felt we were on a different journey, very much isolated, not being understood, and not being able to join in with society. So we felt we had to tell it as it is. We had to be very honest about what was happening in our lives to help other people that were also going through that. And that's why the book's come about, because we were going through a lot of challenges. And writing them down become a bit of a therapy for us at the end.
Sure.
And sharing that and helping other people that felt that maybe it was just them, that it wasn't just them, and that things needed to change for people.
I was going to say, have you noticed since you've started on this path that people have come to you with similar experiences?
Yeah, lots of people said they don't feel alone, but also you see things change within support for services with autism, but a lot needs to change for adults now with autism. That's a big thing now. Advocating for people over 25 and also their families to continue that support as a lifelong disorder.
Oh, certainly. Oh, okay.
For me, one of the things in the very early days that I noticed most, Chris was diagnosed with the autism, but we had 2 sons, and both were going to birthday parties, with family and friends. And the moment we announced that Christopher had autism, the invitations to these parties stopped. And when they could see Christopher's behaviours in those very early years, we weren't popular, if you like. He wasn't popular. They didn't want him there because he could easily undo something. So one of the things I wanted to do when I wrote the first book was educate people. What is autism? Let's give them the truth, what it really is like. But the fact that they... not too many of the people that we spoke to around that time were acceptable of it. And I think it's people need to accept, just as the poem that Tina used this morning, I am human. Christopher's human. Every autistic person on this earth is human, and they deserve exactly the same rights as any other person does. And that sticks in, and that's what's driven me. And we've now written 3 books, and we are in the throes of writing some more, which will help with communication within autism.
Okay.
And we will keep going as basically as long as we got breath, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because it's a real passion now.
Sure.
And that's how we see it.
Yeah, and when you're at a conference such as this, speaking with other individuals that work in the industry or work with people with challenging behaviours, are you getting lots of insights that help contribute towards your book? Is it sort of verifying you on the right track?
Absolutely, and I think it's fair to say to you though that when Chris was diagnosed, we asked the lady that did that. Well, how serious is Christopher? Where is he on the spectrum? She said he's very seriously autistic, very severely autistic. And I thought, this can't be so bad then, we can manage this. And then came the news that it gets worse as they get older. And we went to see the paediatrician not too long after that, who then said to us that Christopher is one of the worst cases of autism she had met in the whole of her career. She's a very experienced lady. And again, that made me think, we've got to do something about this. We've got to help other people, because there are other people going to come along just as bad as Chris. And when we wrote the first book, we had some wonderful things come back in the reviews saying, thank you, I don't feel so alone now. Just things like that, and it just keeps you going forward. And our aim is always now to help others as much as it is to help Chris.
Yeah, and as long as your guys' message is getting out there, then things like the exclusion of parties and things is hopefully something that won't occur as often, because we more inclusivity in society.
I think the other thing to emphasise as well is our books are unlike many of the other books that write about autism. Many of them are written in a scientific way. They're written by doctors or people like that. Ours is written as what I would call true parents. We tell it as it is. We're talking about what happened in the home, and how we got around it. And to me, that's so much more important. I haven't got the knowledge to be able to write books in a scientific way, but what I can do is write a really true, authentic story about how things are from us, and it's written from the heart, full of passion. And I think other parents can relate to that and say, hey, look at this is us. this is just like we're living our lives. We can learn something from this. And that's really what I'm out to do. And I know it's Tina's thing as well, isn't it? What do you think, Terry?
I think support has got better. It's definitely got more understanding within society, but we just keep needing and learning, and the only person you can learn for is the person that's going through it.
Certainly.
So more talking to people that have actually got autism, they're able to articulate more observations and pouring that into the services that they need, and supporting the people around them, the parents that need to be looked after as well, because it often can be very, very isolating and impact on their own mental health.
No, certainly,
well.
Yes. I know you're coming from there. Yeah. My son has autism himself, so I understand what you guys are going through. Yeah.
Nobody asks if you're okay.
No, they don't. No.
And I think as parents, you need to look after yourself. And I always say to people, make sure you're getting a good night's sleep.
Yes.
If you can.
Yeah. No, certainly. But having that, like you both said, that true to life perspective thing is really going to help people, I think, because they'll be able to take that and apply it into their own lives.
The first point of what we had at the beginning was that virtual hug, when you couldn't meet people, but you could go onto a forum and you get a virtual hug. And that meant a lot. Just that connection with another human being, saying that we understand where you're coming from. We'll put their arms around you and just say you're okay. We've got you on this. We understand, and this needs to be more of that. We do need to link together and talk to each other and say, if you're not okay, we can talk through this, and that's where we're trying to open up our conversations within Tell It As It Is to other parents and say, come and speak to us. We might be able to help you, but we will listen as well.
Sure. Yeah, certainly. So tell it how it is. Fantastic. That's great stuff.
Life was so much easier before Christopher hit 18. Although we had some problems at 2 or 3 of his schools, once he became an adult, if we hadn't had deputyship, I could, now looking back, I could sort of see social services taking over and wanting to dictate, because even though we had deputyships, they were still trying to dictate the terms, where Christopher would go, where he'd live, what sort of carers he would have. But having that deputyship, and I would emphasise this to as many as possible, when your child is approaching, 17 and a half, start looking and get a deputyship in place so that you still have the say. Because the minute that clock strikes 12 o'clock on the day of his, where he's 17 and so many odd days old, the minute he hits 18, if you haven't got that deputyship, you then have no legal rights at all towards him. He's his own being, he's an adult, and they then can quickly, the social services quickly come in and start saying, well, this is what we think is going to happen. When they say we think, that's what they're going to do,
right?
But we've battled through all of that,
sure,
and we're not been scared to do it. And what again I say to anyone in the situation, get in touch with us if you want. You can email us. Our email is tellitisasis@gmail.com, and we'll come on to a Zoom, talk to you, and give you all the advice that we possibly can and help that we can. We don't know it all. No one does. But I know one thing, we know a lot more now than we did when we started the journey, and that we can do a heck of a lot to help so many others.
That's great, and just having that conversation with people could help them come up with their own plans and their own perspective on the situation.
Talking about anything, isn't it? What's the old saying? A problem shared is a problem halved.
Sure.
And I suppose, that's a good way really to put it.
That's great, guys. Thank you so much, Tina and Charles, for coming down and speaking to us on the
podcast
today.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No worries at all. Okay, I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.